It's time for Planet Green.
We have launched.
We've completely launched. We've started the show, and it is Planet Green Trees. We're about to embark 2 hours of medical marijuana and marijuana reform in Michigan.
Planet Green Trees. Attention, ladies and gentlemen. The Planet Green Trees show is underway with your host, attorney Michael Komorn.
It'll be okay.
Brendan, your two biggest fans.
Alrighty.
We have launched.
Welcome, everybody. Planet Green Trees is officially beginning. Episode number 549. It may be a little abbreviated. We may be cutting it out early at 9:30 at Steve's request, demands. But
Which really means like 10:15.
We've been off for a couple weeks, and it's good to be back and be able to gather and talk about some of the things that we plan to talk about. We're calling it the anniversary of the great victory. It's been, I guess, a year since the Michael Thue Court of Appeals case.
It has not been a year already.
Yes, it has, Jim.
Oh, my God.
It really has. And you know what else? I'll talk about it later.
And one of the things we wanted to discuss was what has been the impact. Michael Thue is going to be joining us to discuss that. Are judges still penalizing patients for their medical use of marijuana while on probation? Is a question we want to answer.
Yes.
We have our own testimony that we can offer, or
Civil
stories.
war in the courts.
All right, so that is the name of the show. That's with our special guest who's in the queue. I understand we're going to get to him, not make him wait long. Some of the topics that I'm going to tease that we may talk about or may not will involve House Bill 5512. Start it upside down, Tommy.
No, it's fine.
5512. Michigan operators reflect on lessons learned from last November's recall.
Boom.
There's a lot more to be discussed. City council members has a new plan, but will it finally usher recreational marijuana into Detroit?
Huh.
I say no.
Is it possible to use medical marijuana while on probation? The anniversary of the victory, as I mentioned. Police seizure of marijuana dispensary. Cash leads to federal litigation. Maybe there'll be a rant. Maybe there will not.
That case.
Which one? This one?
Just
Yeah,
talk
I mean,
about-
it's...
that's, I was reading that the other day, and that's a shit show, that deal. That's bad.
We'll do it live. Okay.
Corrupt bullshit is what that is.
We'll do it live.
All right, so let's introduce everybody. We're going to go around the room real fast here. We've got Michael Thue in the queue here. We'll start out with the Bunker Boys, Tommy, Justin, and Dan, who are not dressed for the camera right now.
No, they're
Keep
not
it-
dressed at all.
Keep it under wraps, guys. Take it easy over there. And moving along, we've got the one and only founder of Michigan Parents for Compassion. Please welcome Jim Powers.
Good evening, Michael. Good evening, everybody. It's good to be here after a little hiatus, a little vacay, but glad to be back and looking forward to the show.
All right. I hope everyone get your R&R. Moving around to my dear friend and rover here at Komorn Law, retired police officer, detective from Canton, and all things of effort here at Komorn Law, really the anchor. Please welcome my friend Steve Miller.
Thank you for that. Good to be back after a couple of weeks.
All right. And moving into the land of the Zoom room,
Loomies.
we're lucky to be joined by Jamie Lowell. Jamie needs no introduction. He is the one responsible for everything. Please welcome Jamie Lowell.
Hello, and Michael's case, that of course you and he were victorious on a year ago, has a lot to do with House Bill 55.
That's right. That's right. That's the, we'll talk, in fact, I know we passed this around a little bit before, but Jamie, first of all, thanks for joining us tonight, and I want to hear what you've been up to, whatever you want to share, but 5512 is the topic you want to discuss. Tell the listeners a little bit about what that bill stands for and how it does in fact interact. And let's just, while you're thinking and talking about that, let's get Michael Thue on so he doesn't have to wait much longer. He may have to run off and do some skiing or something, or snowboarding somewhere. But is he available to get into the?
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. I just had it muted. I'm just driving tonight. That's why I have the video off.
Pay attention to the road. Pay attention to the road. Do not jeopardize. First of all, thanks for coming on short notice. Who knew it was a year already? Has it been a year? Maybe it seems like longer. I don't know.
Yeah,
Is it even shorter?
I mean, It was last year this time. I was coming back from Bohemia, and I did Ryan's podcast on Redemption. After the ruling came out. Yeah, can't believe it. It's been a year already.
And I've been on the phone dealing with the
Hold on.
aftermath.
First of all, just to clarify, we did do a show on Planet Green Trees with you. You were a special guest.
We did.
Someone else just snagged you first.
Yes.
I'm kidding. There's a lot of podcasts. There's a lot of podcasts.
There's only one Planet Green Trees.
Yeah, there's only one Planet Green Trees, the home team.
But it was we did talk that morning. I remember what came out was crazy, what was going on, and it was. But first of all, it was. First of all, what a great victory, really. I mean, the decision is so sound. The law that was overturned was so bad. It was like the perfect combination of like peanut butter and jelly. That kind of perfect. But and Michael knew that. I mean, I got to give you a lot of credit, Mike, because I know you knew that I wanted this case to be one that we could, make monumental. And your thing was that, let's do it if it can have an impact on everybody else throughout the state, if successful. And it did, in theory, or at least in legal, what you might call opinions, that are supposed to be precedent and whatnot. But I'm sure you get asked about it all the time. What's your experience been as you have been the ambassador of this ruling, so to speak? Do people want to talk to you about it? Do they recognize you and your name associated with it, or are you still not identifiable in public in that regard?
No, I mean, I did finally, like halfway through the year, I changed my Instagram around and put it on Instagram, but so that way people can see it right away and have links to it. I really thank you for taking that charge. We wouldn't have been able to accomplish that. Traverse City has had this ongoing battle with me since I came home from prison and got my medical marijuana card in 2009. I was the first prisoner on parole with a card. And, we really tried to make some movement back then, and I just wasn't able to, and keep getting you to support me in that fight. We really have been able to make a significant impact. I still, I
Why do we have an
I
echo?
I come, maybe my headset.
I think it's better now.
Yeah, it's better now.
Okay.
Keep going.
But we really have an impact on people's lives. I get phone calls about it, references to it. I get other people that have reached out to me that the courts are telling them now, even if you or asking them if they have their card. So in them asking if the person has their card, they're basically also telling the person, go get your card and we'll be okay with this. So, that's not every county. We're going to still have things going both ways based on opinions in different counties. But, I, even at the Capitol protest, when I had the chance to get up and speak and talk about it, young man had come up to me and he had been in a really bad car accident. And because of that car accident, he had to do a little bit of jail time and ended up he was all busted up and they forced him back to his prescriptions. As soon as the ruling came out, he was able to turn that ruling into his probation officer at the time and switch back to cannabis and has not had to go back to any pharmaceutical since. So it's and then it led on to, even getting that guy, I believe it was another Michael, but I don't think that's correct. But another guy out of prison, and they carried on even to have a representation with the Department of Corrections and parole, which, that has its own governing type of body, but that it had to, get worked through, because it's not just a judge, but, to be able to have an impact on people's lives now, even on parole. So it's the goal that I wanted to accomplish when I came home from prison in 2008, we finally were able to do it. It took us a while, but we were finally able to do it. But like, you have a right to use your cannabis card, and no one gets to argue with you about it. That medicine is recognized now in the state of Michigan as a medicine, and not to be argued regarding that. So,
I think it's one of the things that was interesting about it, and it's been a year. It's been a year, but
Been a year.
so that would be 2021, and the argument was in 2020. I think at the end of the year, and we got the opinion pretty. But legalization had already happened then, and it's the first time after X amount of years that it was till we got that ruling. The language had always been there, but it basically represented that despite overwhelming or at least a majority support for the legalization of marijuana and unequivocally a large percentage of the population in favor of medical marijuana, at that point in time, Grand Traverse County and the district court was taking the stance that marijuana bad. It's not medicine, and we're not gonna. Still in 2020, 2019, 2020, right? Because that's the time frame that now that had been their policy forever, and they were just sticking with it. And there's a lot of absurdity with the actual rule that they were relying on. I think if I recall, the retired the retired circuit court judge who'd been retired for 3 or 4 years, so it was like back to 2014 or whatever, had issued a policy precluding any medical marijuana or recreational marijuana, period. Just as a blanket, So, and they just all relied on that. Oh, there's an order. We're obligated to follow it and whatnot. But I'm just pointing that out to show you how the disparity of the social acceptance of cannabis still exists throughout the state. Jamie, do you agree with that? Do you think it's been neutralized across the board? County to county, city to city, village to village, or do you think,
Hasn't been
yeah,
perfect, but and it's been we didn't get into it yet, but some people apparently believe there are unintended consequences. Which is one of the reasons why they're trying to shore up the ability for the judges to override even the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act and everything else in the drug courts.
Well, okay, that's the other bill. So let's talk about that for a second. First, before we get to that, what I was asking is, when we look at the implementation of the recreational law and really what was a fundamental stare decisis opinion in the Michael Thue case, what impact have those two significant legal rulings that created jurisprudence in Michigan? How has that been treated throughout the state of Michigan? So regarding you cannot punish a medical marijuana patient for any reason or for the medical use of marijuana when they're on probation. And ironically, the same law in the recreational it's the exact same language. And I have an anecdotal story about that as well. But when we look at the Thue case, we can ask, has it been accepted? I mean, the
Michael,
law
it's
was
the same language. It's the same language, but does it have the same weight with as far as legally, the medical stuff's not attached?
No, okay, what I'm saying is this. The ruling is the ruling. District courts are required to follow the, precedent. It's
Not all of them think so.
And whether they think so or not, some of them may not anyways, just because they can't stand it. They're still, adverse to it, and they just can't bring themselves to do it. There have been some situations like this. I can point to, I mean, there was a, I'm going to be specific, I think. I'm just going to, we'll just say is it St. Clair County District Court judge?
Yeah, we got that call this week.
Who called us and asked for some resources to appeal a district court judge that was denying people over and over and over, or at least requiring them to do things such as get your treating, quote unquote, treating physician's approval, not a
You have to have your primary care physician, not a certifying physician.
That's not really where that opinion is supposed
thing.
to go. That opinion is about having the card, and the card as it stands, is not something you can get behind. It's not up for grabs. The state has authorized it. They've issued it, and it must be honored. Otherwise, there's no meaning. I'll tell you, it happens to be in that jurisdiction. I've had some other interactions with their drug task forces, and it is. I don't know which came first, the judges believing this or it being the testimony of some of the officers, but I distinctly remember a drug task force officer answering questions in the following manner. If you knew that they had cards and the amount of marijuana that was in the trunk was not more than what they were allowed to have, why did you arrest them? Well, you know, Mr. Komorn, just because they got a card and they don't have more than they're supposed to doesn't mean they're not in compliance. I'm going to have to continue to investigate and look more and see if they're really, that was and that is not the way it's supposed to be. That is like the wrong answer. He also said he didn't arrest my client at the car for this event. He detained him. He did an investigative detention for 3 days instead. That's what he called it.
3 days.
But that's an example out there, and I just really was not meaning to get into that case. But the judge, a specific judge out there, is causing a lot of grief for the defender's office. Called us about that. We've got other places. We get calls all the time. We had to file some. What's that?
Don't tell me what to do.
What? What happened? All right, so there's other stories in the big city, isn't there, about people still being denied their medical use?
I just got a call I haven't even talked to you about yet. Ann Arbor parole office is saying no to somebody.
Oh,
Parole
boy.
or probation?
Parole, I believe.
They can't do that.
Well, I'll tell you this, the next question that's equally as interesting will be whether or not the recreational law mandates that protection in the same way, and the language is exact. Jamie, regarding this House Bill 5512, if I'm not mistaken, this is the one that gives the authority to the drug courts to preclude the medical use of marijuana while in the drug courts or alcohol courts. Is that what I understand it to be? Let's look at it.
Yeah, well, the judge can determine if the condition is quote unquote severe enough for the person to continue to use their medicine, which of course, sets up a lot of things that we take issue with, such as the judge being the doctor, considering cannabis one of the dangerous substances that the drug court should really be concerned about.
I ran into a problem with this. I may have mentioned it in the past where it was a veteran who was a medical marijuana patient, and it was recommended that we get into Veterans Court because Veterans Court is a good program. It's got good intentions. The ultimate result is a non-conviction. It's like a plea under advisement kind of thing. But despite the fact that there's clear policy that allows for veterans to use cannabis when they're in Veterans Court, as put out by the federal government, this particular court was not having any of it. So that was not a thing, and I was rather disappointed. But, Jamie, this is more, how do you say, nefarious, maybe? Because it's
bad. It's really bad.
Let's get it up there. Jim, you got it up somewhere?
Yeah, it impacts mental health court, drug court, veterans court. There's some amendment or some exemption of some DUI interlock language. I mean, it's clearly just like Jamie said, it's an attempt to just totally circumvent the MMMA by the courts in the state of Michigan.
What politicians put this thing for?
There's a shitload of them.
It says it resolves any conflict between the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act of 1961 drug court thing, whatever that act.
Public Health Code, right.
And in favor of it.
They will reign supreme.
Well, it's crazy. There was obviously some. This is when you see what happens when the court's lobbyists. What? The court has a lobbyist? That's weird.
Shouldn't be allowed.
So do the police.
Shouldn't be allowed.
Michigan
That
State
shouldn't be
Police
allowed.
specifically.
Well,
Shouldn't be allowed.
No, I'm sorry. They're a liaison. I believe they're not They're not a lobbyist. They're a liaison, Steve. Very different. Very different.
Shouldn't be allowed.
Reps,
You know,
Rep Kelly,
gotta,
Rep LeGrand, Mueller, Beeson, Yarrock, Stone, Koopa,
Is it bipartisan or
Sorby,
is it
Filler.
It's very a lot of support, bipartisan support. A lot of people are duped into believing this is a good idea.
Oh, it's terrible.
Another big problem with this is there was no recognition and consultation or working with all of the relevant stakeholders. People with critical input. This would be another one we wouldn't have to be in opposition to. This was in the Regulatory Reform Committee. It just got transferred to the Judiciary Committee to be part of like a 4-bill package or something like that. I don't know what the other bills are about or if it's tie-barred or anything like that.
This is just another example of the continuance of the war on drugs and the
But
war on marijuana.
It'll probably get out of committee, similar to the ridiculous fucking 5301 and stuff like that. And we're going to have to work on the 28 no votes and stuff. We just wouldn't be in this position of having to respond to it if
Well,
part of the conversation.
standing out here is the language to try to reinforce and protect the government medical assistance program or commercial or nonprofit health insurer to have to reimburse a patient for, right? That's part of what is being talked about. Nothing is actually okay.
Reimburse a patient for what?
Their expense for medical marijuana.
yeah, like with Michigan compensation, just like they did in New Jersey, you could actually make, because it's a state law and the Michigan compensation is a state law, they've followed that ruling from New Jersey that said you can actually be reimbursed. So they're trying to make sure that they don't have to start paying for people's cannabis. But, I got to say, I just kind of assumed that this didn't apply to drug court. Like, you got to sign your own set of rules and things to, to be a part of drug court. I figured they can kind of make their own rules. If you want to be in the program, you can. If not, then don't. But,
Well, that's how they're
makes
framing it.
sense.
That's how they're framing it. They're saying it's more of a you consent to enter the program. You may get probation, but if you want to get into drug court or veterans court, it's an additional consent. We have to have a mutual agreement that these are the terms. But the question is, under those circumstances, why would the court be any more correct in depriving someone's medical use of marijuana under the circumstances? Like, I don't think there's anything that the Thue opinion says and stands for that would ever allow it to be, unless they waive it, unless they sign it away. But I don't know that's what I think this legislation is attempting to do.
Well, and if they got it to apply to parole, it seems like it should apply to any courts or any system across the board. But yet, we still had, the drug or the driving Secretary of State that's still not honoring. You got to pass a clean test for cannabis also, like, to be able to get your license back for a DUI. Like,
It's still on the control substances.
even though they got a card, like, I got a patient in drug court right now that he just can't use it right now. He, doesn't want to put up a fight because with drug court, he was able to have his license back. And
Wait.
It's like his third DUI, but.
I think it may be not just for drug court, because there's no specific language in here that speaks to drug court. What it does, it references the Judiciary Act, which is the law that creates the probation department, right?
Oh, that probation act.
That was
is
another thing. I was
bad.
discussing this with Cass, actually, who was on here a few weeks ago, about how it just says here's the standard. It doesn't necessarily really very specifically say this is all just included in the drug court.
No, I know. But what I'm saying is the revised Judiciary Act of 1961 has got, like 899 chapters. And the reference here is that the revised Judiciary Act, Public Act, and but Public Act 236. So talking about if any of these things within the revised Judiciary Act, they're not. So for example, the Public Health Code, which is the statute that, the Controlled Substance Act of Michigan, that's not necessarily mentioned here. The Judiciary Act deals with, here, I'll tell you what it deals with. It's got things like the organization and powers of the Supreme Court. It's got jurisdiction of the circuit courts. It's got the basis, it's got this whole, all the rules and laws, probate court and mental health courts and drug treatment courts, right? 10A, 10B are part of the juvenile mental health veterans court. So they're saying that so by reference, right, you've got this revised Judiciary Act of 1961, this is what this is. The Judiciary Act of 1961 is an act to revise and consolidate the statutes relating to the organization and jurisdiction of the courts of the state, the power and duties of the courts and the judges and other officers of the court, the forms, attributes of civil claims and actions, etc. So this is the legislation that allows the courts to do what they do. And the authority here includes the chapters of jurisdiction of the courts and the different probations that are available in the court system. And the 5512 doesn't reference them. It just very, it doesn't say drug court. It just says the Revised Judiciary Act speaking to all. It's kind of sneaky.
That's all the section. That's how it references it.
Sure.
It doesn't explain what they all are. Just says this section. Or
Right.
You have to go through the counter.
It may not involve. Go ahead.
Does that leave it open to interpretation to any judge in any court then?
No.
Whether or not it's severe enough?
No. They're not even saying that. This says that, however, so in the MMA, there's always been this conflict language. The same language exists in the MRTMA, which in essence is, if there's a conflict with this law, like in the MRTMA, there's the same language. Conflict with this law, MRTMA wins. The MMA, same thing. All other acts and parts of acts inconsistent with this act do not apply to the medical use of marijuana as provided for by this act, period.
Boom.
The amendment is, however,
This shit doesn't.
if this act, the MMA, is inconsistent with any part of Chapter 10A, 10B, 10C, or 12 of the Revised Judiciary Act of 1961, or these other things, that part applies. Got it?
It's all in favor of the 1961 Act, so that it's no longer.
It's been amended, though. It's not just that, because the mental health court and stuff has been added in, but that's the reference to it. And the specific ones in there are 10A, 10B, 10C, and 12, which I can tell you what those are if we need to. 10A, drug treatment. 10B, mental health. What did I say? The one 12 is Veterans Court. So that's what they're doing. So they're locking those babies out, specifically those, and I guess one of the ways. One of the ways to undo, I don't know that, I don't know that this may not be the best way to do it, right? The best way to do it is not necessarily, it's because the strength of the MMA that resulted in that didn't necessarily derive from the conflict language of the MMA. It arose out of Section 4. Right?
Yep.
See what I'm saying?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So the medical use of marijuana in compliance still provides immunity.
No, it doesn't. No. Not if this language passes. It doesn't. No way.
It provides immunity. There's a conflict
Yeah,
here.
there's a conflict.
How's it?
And the conflict is clearly addressed in the bill, and it's not in our favor. It's sorry about your luck. The courts reign supreme. Fuck you.
Yeah,
Kings and queens.
I just don't know that.
That's what it is.
it's not how it works.
No, it's not supposed. That's not what we voted for. The whole idea was to keep their asses out of it.
I
They
think.
just can't stay out of it.
No.
Here's what I think. I think if you're talking about and being honest about the legal concept of immunity. Immunity
I
is.
agree, but This isn't.
No, I know,
immunity.
I know,
This is
no.
immunity with an enormous exception, which is
Yeah, that's.
it's
You
bullshit.
can't allow the courts to go back to playing judge again. I mean, that's just completely absurd. Like,
Well, they
sure,
would.
I mean, the judge to play medical. I mean,
Yeah.
courts to play judge. But it's
You
not.
know what's gonna, Jamie. I mean, we've talked about this in the past. I think if having another go at some of the substance abuse issues that get people into veterans court, that get them into drug court, that get them into as a medical condition in for marijuana. You know what? I worry about. Many of the courts around the state do things called family court.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So family court is like when.
It's not like family style where you eat.
No, family court's like when you are fighting for your kid,
Yep.
getting your rights back to your kid, or something that's the government's taking from you,
The shittiest game on earth.
and they co-manage you as
Well, you're a client. is what
in
the
your
point
as
is.
a criminal case.
It's not
and
criminal. You're a client. You're their client.
No, but I'm saying that the scenarios where a mother may be, needing to report to court in a criminal case, and she's also now dealing with a CPS case.
Right.
And they co-manage those in family court, like your probation. Instead of just being straight up probation for whatever it is, they'll send you over to family court because they're going to work on your family quote unquote skills. The government's going to teach you how to be a better parent. That's the premise. But in going over there into the family court, in this kind. Creates that scenario which if someone's using medical marijuana, I could see them. We've had this situation, in which like the judge totally adamant to it, thinking that it was, and she was in some kind of family court. Remember that? It was some kind of mix of CPS issues and a criminal case, probation or what have you, and they just got him. But I'm telling you, immunity still carries this.
Not under this bill. It doesn't.
I don't know if
No way.
a conflict of law applies to someone's immunity.
It does. It clearly states that any portion of the act that's in conflict, and then there's this big long list of exceptions, and it all has to do with the fucking court.
Here you go. I think here's my. If you look at it from a perspective of immunity, qualified immunity for police in 1983 cases,
There's exceptions to those too.
there are, but the premise begins with you can't touch this. Dun, 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 dun,
That's how it starts. You
No,
can't
seriously,
touch this.
You can't get
unless-
close to it. You can't get close to it, and you can't even take a swing at it unless. But it starts at that premise. So I'm saying to you, before we even get to a possible conflict of law, a person who is immune is immune. Immunity means there's no jurisdiction over you. You have no claim to make against me. That's what I'm saying.
But there is no claim. What they're getting at is that if you are in the court system, that they can tell you to stop using marijuana. That's the whole idea. And I don't see an argument. If
There's an equal protection problem here too. If other people have access to it, to deprive someone because they're a medical marijuana patient, or if they sign off on it,
I agree, and
is
it's not
problematic.
what we voted
I don't know.
for.
This is some shit. I mean, this is.
And then,
Yeah,
can
you're
these
right,
people
but
at the
we
court
passed the law for it.
Can these people at the court really say that marijuana is at the heart of this person's problems?
Probably
I'm just going to
not.
go ahead and take a wild guess and say no, and that probably the majority of the cases deal with abuse of alcohol.
Right.
That'd be my guess coming out of the gate
Yep.
without knowing anything.
You
Right.
continue to force people back to opiates, and they think that's a better route because it supports their system. And I mean, every step we've taken since the passage of the Medical Marijuana Act in 2008, the courts continue to try to chip away to take our rights away because we won. And then we want to get in 2018, and they keep throwing bills at us trying to take our rights away. Like, oh, no, this isn't what the people voted for. You know, I still, again, I'm one of the only people that operate under the original MMA. There's not many original clubs and things like compassion centers and places like that still are open and exist. Like, even this whole new licensing structure is the state trying to hijack our laws and our rules to take away what we had going, which did fine for 10 years, to regulate everything and over-regulate everything and make it so we still can't do this and we still can't do that.
You know, whether or not you know, there's a lot to be said about the current, you know, regulated system and whatnot, but
It's the new war on drugs.
right,
New war on
it's
marijuana.
the
Regulation.
Well, I think it's more than that, right? It's that the courts don't like being told what to do.
but what
How dare you tell them they can't tell people not to use weed? Are you out of your fucking mind?
I made the comparison to Michael earlier. They are the kings and queens of our day.
right.
These judges. I mean, back in medieval times, who made the decisions in matters when there was a dispute? It was the king. Yeah. It was the queen.
Right.
And where are we at today? Right. Where are we at? We don't call them kings and queens today. We call them judges.
Mm-hmm. One of the hijacked principles, which I still don't understand how this happened, and especially regarding caregivers. Jamie, you'll follow me here. Like, there was always there was a steadfast, unequivocal line of the protections of a caregiver, right? You know, it's a non-disclosed, it's a private registry. They can't give out the information. You know, if it was believed that the police, we think they were at various times getting into the registry, that was problematic. It created problems on the other side because if they wanted to know, they couldn't just get into it. They had to seek a court order, which we've had cases where they did it. But nevertheless, and the idea that any city could regulate a caregiver's grow at home was a non-starter. There may have been ordinances that existed that required people to do stuff that were on the books, but
You didn't actually have to do it.
nobody did it, and there was no standing to challenge it until something like that happened. Now, other cities like I think Ypsilanti or Ypsilanti Township, one of the two, like banned caregivers, 12 plans.
Ypsi Township.
Right. So one of there's stories like that out throughout in different cities, and creating new little subsets of stuff that they're trying to get to. That unless the caregiver, first of all, if they're learned of, and the caregiver doesn't know what their legal rights are, then a lot of times they capitulate and they're talked into it by the code inspector, talk to an inspector, whatnot. But the point I'm trying to get at is this: so absent some of these anomalies where the cities had, not just created illegal caregiver rules locally or by ordinance, but were enforcing it and no one had challenged it, really. They were just kind of getting away with it in some pockets here and there. At the end of the day, their position, and the position has always been that they're immune from these kind of ordinance violations. If there's an ordinance violation, you do this, this, and this, but you're in compliance under state law, you're immune from any penalty of any kind.
The way it's supposed to
right.
be.
That's number one. Number two, under no circumstances ever would this caregiver ever be considered, having a home occupation. It was never a thing. In fact, even though there's no law saying one way or the other, there's a misconception, you would say, that if the law enforcement heard that there was a caregiver making money, quote unquote, they were going to raid him. That'd be like
in some communities.
In some communities, but I don't know that. But and I guess it was kind of whether it was going on or not, if it was learned. I think probably law enforcement's thing was, none of the caregivers stay in compliance. They're all making money selling their overages. There's no such thing as overages. There's no such thing as overages. That's what one would say in the law. So if there's a thing called overages, it's an amount of marijuana that is more than what's for the patient's allotment, and arguably it would be the more than amount reasonably necessary to treat the patients, right? Which is now. So that's how overages would be viewed by law enforcement pre maybe the caregiver can bring it into the system for that little loop, but that was a like a administrative state of emergency order kind of thing. That was and it was an but it is only because of the principle that the caregivers are a home occupation. I don't know how that got hijacked. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like we went 10 years with it. Like that was a fact, a suspicious fact. They were going to raid you because it's so illegal to do that, to be having overages and making money, like a home business of making money. There's a difference of what a caregiver does because they're getting compensation for cost. I don't know that equates to a retail business home occupation where you're allowed to make $20,000 then that maximum or something like that, right? In that case,
is that what it says?
It's something like that. There's a maximum amount of money that they can. But the idea is that it is a retail business. You know, like a farmer that's selling cherries, you know, or blueberries, or name it. You know, they're around it. You don't need to get a retail license. You don't need to get
you just sell your.
You sell it out of your house.
Yeah.
You may have to register, and they may be able to. Inspect to make sure the location that it's at is habitable, right? But if you're I'm talking about a home occupation. If you're declaring yourself as a home occupation and people are going to be coming onto your property, there's some interest of the city to make sure it's safe.
Yeah, but
okay?
they're not really customers. They're patients.
I'm talking about when I say a blueberry farmer or a cherry farmer. I am saying that a caregiver is not a home occupation.
Right.
The business model of a blueberry is I'm going to grow these things. I'm going to put it in a stand. Set on my stand, an lemonade stand, right? And I'm going to make $20,000 without having to get a retail store or whatever
we should be able to sell the marijuana at the stand. I think that's the way.
That is part of the Oklahoma model, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if they have maximums, but if you could do that, people would be more inclined to want you to inspect, and I'm sure it'd be. And it is. That's not the point. It's a good idea, but what I'm getting at is just this.
I don't understand the inspection part, but
what they say is that if you have a home business, we have a right to look and see what you're cooking in your kitchen.
So if you're selling Avon out of your house, they can come in and inspect, make sure that
whatever the nature,
holding too much Avon,
whatever the nature and purposes of the business may cause one or the other. That's what I'm saying.
That's what the police are here for, to go be over-regulators.
To go
heavily armed, very aggressive over-regulators of business.
A lot of cities and townships require you to get a permit to lease or rent a house. Do you know about this?
No.
You never heard of this before? Jamie?
To rent your house, you mean?
Yeah, as a rental property.
That's a thing for sure.
So what is that? They want to get in. They got to make sure that it's the logic in the law is that they need to get in there if you're going to rent it.
But that's a little different.
Okay.
I mean, it is.
The only it is different, and it's none of it is the same. I'm drawing this distinction. I'm saying that a person who lives in a house, who buys the house, forget that they're renting. Just say they buy the house.
Yep.
They have the state has no interest in coming in and inspecting.
Correct.
That's not a thing.
Right.
Okay, so that's where the starting point is. So you're in your house.
Yep. Chilling.
And you're a caregiver.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just giving some care.
And this is not a business. This is assisting.
So they don't need to come in. That's my point.
Okay. So
I think they should leave the blueberry farmer alone.
And you're not declaring under any circumstances that you are a home occupation,
right?
Or would you ever be subject to any kind of rules and regulations associated with home occupations? This is a private registry. The number one point.
Yes.
The number one point is there's a security issue that you're not giving this information up what's going on there. Some people may know about it, but you don't need to be past. I mean
loose lips sink ships. That's what they used to say. Right?
And so to me, that's the flaw of the DeRuiter opinion. If you I don't know how they got. Now I realize this may be the talk. I realize that the conversation and narrative amongst caregivers, Michael Thue or Jamie. For those about to rock, tell me if this is true. there is there's a dialogue about it. I mean, amongst the community, and I'm sure over time the evolution of the narrative has changed. Caregivers may say, my business got cut out of the licensed market, so to speak, right?
Sure.
And that may not be the type of thing that a caregiver would say. I mean, the era of evolution is clearly this state of emergency.
The behavior of one individual or even a small group of individuals shouldn't reflect on the group as a whole.
Well, however many it was, 1 to 10 to 100 to 0, the narrative about that found its way into the DeRuyter opinion.
Oh,
it was like they said, okay,
I know.
we've got all these cases that give no justification to do this. I mean, every single judge that saw the Tier B case.
Yeah.
There was like 11 or 12 on the way up. There's like the district court judge, the circuit court, 3 judges, the court of appeals, and 9. So it was 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I don't know, 14 judges. They all ruled in favor of Tariq, maybe different reasons, but ultimately the Supreme Court was unanimous. All of them. There's no way they could stop. So this is such a powerful ruling that there'd be no way for them to get around that. All of a sudden, someone inserts secretly, like there's someone injected in the under an armpit or something like that this is all of a sudden a home occupation.
Right.
Where did that come from? How did they get there?
I mean, it's pretty clever.
It's torturous. It's got
it's
got a Carruthers logic to it.
It totally does.
It's like a Carruthers logic.
Well, it's just they were clearly unhappy with the inability to regulate this stuff, and they wanted to find a path through it, and sure as shit they did, didn't they?
I don't know.
I mean,
It's
this conglomerate of bipartisan people in our state legislature, I guess none of them believe in keeping the government out of our lives anymore, Jim.
No, they got to deal with an act that has a shrinking patient and caregiver base that consistently shrinks quarter after quarter, and that's their biggest concern. I got news for you. I got a list of shit that these people can focus on that will actually bring some good to this state, as opposed to trying to, once again...
They just can't get away from it.
No.
We need some more libertarians in there. That'll end this shit.
First of all, let's welcome Amanda Joslin, who's joining us. She is an hour
Andy
late.
J.
She will be docked. Tardy.
Late.
Tardy. Coming in hot. It's okay.
Better late than never. I
Always
guess.
true.
And
Always.
That's true.
It's always great to see you guys.
Glad to have you. You're. It looks like it's sunny around you.
Always sunny where I'm at.
That's what I was saying. There's like a.
Is that in Philadelphia then? It's always sunny in Philadelphia?
Well, a little further south, but same concept.
We were discussing some of the evil, nefarious acts by a bipartisan group that introduced some bills to basically override the MMA's, intending to override the MMA's protection for the medical use of marijuana when on probation for drug courts and veterans
Veteran courts,
Jamie,
mental health courts.
Wow.
Jamie, I'm curious to know, because I know you know everything. What has been the feedback, if you know, from people throughout the state, if they're still having problems being able to use medical marijuana when they're on probation? That's a question I was asking before. Not just that. Do you think, are you hearing nothing, which would mean maybe?
No, I've heard of I don't have any, I guess, specifics off the top of my head, but I've heard of instances where the judges still were not allowing it, still telling the people they couldn't do it.
You know what I've been seeing, Michael, is some folks some drug courts have concocted their own forms. So what they're doing is they're asking for the physician, not even their family doctor, but the certifying physician, they're asking for them to fill out. There's probably about 4 pages to it. And this is, I think there's maybe the 3rd person I've seen come through the clinic that had similar requirements. And it was my understanding, based on what we talked about a bunch of times and what you fought so hard for in court, that just the card itself should provide that protection, and they shouldn't need anything else, because
That's correct.
that's just the nature of the card.
You don't know this, but the show tonight is the anniversary of the great victory of the Michael Thue case. We've been talking about that a lot and asking, what impact it's had. Are people, when Michael Thue walks into the room, does he get a standing ovation? We understand that's a yes. But
Yes.
but for everyone else that has a case and whatnot, and seeks to use medical marijuana, how are the courts dealing with it? And Jamie wanted us and insisted we talk about this bill, House Bill 5512, which is legislation being introduced by bipartisan, specifically to say that when there's drug court, when there's veterans court, when there's what was the other one? Mental health court.
There's some domestic violence stuff in there, which that one doesn't make any damn sense.
The idea is, I think that probation. I don't know. Regular probation is different than mental health court probation or drug court, and therefore you're consenting to this new specialty court, and then they're doing their things. I mean, as it stands right now, immunity is immunity. And I think
unless it's not.
Well, it may be this legislation that if it passes, that happens.
Yeah.
But as of right now,
as of today,
there's nothing that.
We'll see what happens tomorrow.
Well, all right, but the point is simply this:
Did you see this list of sponsors? I mean, I don't get it. I don't get it. This is not. Look at the shit. It is. It's as bipartisan as they come. What the hell is going on?
Post a list of those names so we can attack those
Easy
people
one.
in their district.
It's an easy one to sell,
it may be an easy one to sell, but think about that conversation. Think about it. Okay, so the state's making money selling marijuana, right? Abundance. There's medical, maybe not money for that, but there's still, and some lobby, message, to the legislature's messaging that there's all these probationers that are claiming, getting their cards and using medical marijuana when on probation. That's not right. Yeah. Can't have that.
That's right.
It's all a bunch of bullshit.
So can I chime in and ask? So from the beginning of the Medical Marijuana Act, hasn't there been something in the rules about using the money from the program to educate law enforcement and on how to work with the law?
Never.
Never.
There's no declaration about that. I mean, that's always been the problem of why it was implemented so poorly.
Bill Schuette did educate everybody on the marijuana law, remember?
Well, they've taken our money. So they've taken our money just to turn around and continue to use it against us.
Hell yeah, they are. 100%.
Over and over and over again. And this is the same, it seems like the same thing that's happening.
You got it. You hit the head right on.
They took our money to raid us. Now they're taking our money from a township level. They just got the biggest payout in taxes from recreational marijuana sales, but yet they're going to still tell you from a judge's standpoint how you can use medical marijuana.
Well, of course, because then they get you coming and they get you going. It's a twofer.
Right. So, I mean, it's unacceptable.
Of course it is.
Again, what can we do about it? It's just a continual back and forth battle. Every time we pass something, they pass something.
Right.
Every time we make a step, they try to put us 2 steps back.
I mean, I can tell you what we can do in the short term. Can you bring that list back up, Tommy? If these representatives, if one of them you are in their district, I know mine is, and I know she'll be getting a call from me.
But where are they?
Lori Stone is mine.
Where's mine?
I don't know. Is it up there?
Let's name where they're from, if we can.
Well, I don't know where they're all from. I can't keep track of all of that. But here's the names, and you should absolutely look them up. And I'll tell you what, even more so, if you talk to them and they don't give you the answer that you like, don't send these people money. Don't support them. And sure as shit, don't vote for them.
Right. That's how we hit them, is we may take their job. Right? We have to keep people in office. But, unfortunately, us as activists, and I'll include myself sometimes in this, is we get busy in doing our thing, and we feel like we've made such big accomplishments that we forget that this still is a daily fight, but they're always coming after us and trying to put us back while we're trying to move forward. We're like, we made a victory, and we're moving on like we did. but they're still chipping at our toes. The heels trying to suck us back into the same old fucking overregulated bullshit by some other bill that they passed that is completely against the will of the people.
The House Bill 5512, in some ways, is a compliment to the Thue case. I mean, it's in a sick way because they went out of their way to try to
They want to fix
legislate the Thue
They
case
want to fix the
away.
Thue case.
I mean, the amount of energy and joint thought that is necessary to get there and get to this point is really like it just shows like what an impact that had on them. Like, or to make people complain. Think about the number of fucking people that within the judiciary who are complaining about this, right? There had to be enough to get to like the threshold of.
Earlier, when Robin was describing this to me, she was being told that this was being born out of people's belief that the Thue case has unintended consequences.
What does that mean?
Well, like that the probationers aren't returning to court.
That they get to continue to use medical cannabis instead of being forced to consume opiates and all kinds of other stuff.
What does that mean, Jamie? Tell me what the unintended consequences. I mean, it's just a broad term for like people are smoking pot when they're not supposed to be, kind of thing.
Right, meaning that they don't have as much, as Jim keeps on saying, like they don't have as much control. I can't believe they wouldn't be able to have as much control over this.
I mean, it's been that way since the
But you know exactly how it is.
The judge is not a doctor.
Well, but it doesn't matter. We've all seen it. And you walk into these judges' courtrooms.
Let me say this. He says the judge is not a doctor. In this scenario, the judge is really not a judge either.
Yeah.
Because they missed the law as it was later interpreted by the Court of Appeals.
Yeah.
That's been the same from the very beginning.
But in their heads,
now they gotta change.
Probation is a privilege, Michael. That's what's in their head. And if you want this privilege, you're going to follow my rules.
I want to know with the system.
Back to the punishment can't supersede the crime.
Oh, totally agree. And it can't supersede the law. And that's the problem. Is it like Michael said?
We've been talking about that. Okay, so what happens if I am a person that is, on probation or whatnot, and my judge says that I'm not allowed to use cannabis? Nothing. We can't do anything.
If you're a medical marijuana patient, I mean, you gotta file a motion or you gotta appeal.
Gotta saddle up with an attorney.
Saddle it.
Because
the whole idea was that the Thue case made it so that people would not need to hire a lawyer. Like the law would be followed. But
I see.
That hasn't been the case. There's no issues. I mean, we talked about it before. We're still getting calls. I've had to file motions for certain situations. There are judges that are still prohibiting it.
It's ridiculous.
A lot of effort has been made to try to stop this for some reason. I don't know what the unintended consequences are. It's interesting because this seems to be contrary to the overwhelming investment that we have made in criminal justice reform.
You would think.
The entire
But that's not really what it's about.
It should be, because the premise here, like the master plan of the state, was born out, like the legislation that they're spending time on. They've got committees and commissions about the broken criminal justice system and the trial court funding. They still maintain a bipartisan group that's working diligently to try to implement the program to remove the economic inequalities of the different jurisdictions that are having problems funding themselves and have to rely on litigants. So that's one of the things. The other thing is the jail overcrowding. And the jail overcrowding produced a lot of this expungement legislation, rules about not denying occupational license, so people could not just have crimes removed from their record, but actually get jobs and licenses that were better paying jobs. Yeah. And we just went through a whole thing that allows for, the no cash bail for many offenses, like what normally was like a driving while license suspended. You got to, you didn't get your driver's license renewed, for an example.
Yep.
And it's expired.
Yeah.
You're driving on a suspended or driving on an expired license, or it's been
Yeah, but
suspended.
you don't go to jail for that.
People get locked up for that.
I mean, I know they do.
People, listen. What I'm saying to you is that they can't. It's now legislated that they can't do it.
That's my point.
They used to before they'd lock you up for 2 or 3 days, but it's a little bit
For
bizarre.
driving on an expired license, that seems
Expired, lost,
a little harsh. A lost license,
suspended,
suspended. That's different, right?
or revoked.
But still, it puts people in this vicious cycle.
Driving without
right?
a license.
It's like, remember those driver responsibility fees? Those were always fun, right? Like you suspend somebody's license, they lose.
This is
their
what I'm
job,
talking about.
And they charge you $500 to renew your license.
And then they will arrest you because you're driving without a license because you didn't pay.
And then you get to do it all over
No,
again.
then you're in jail and then you lose your job.
Yeah, exactly.
This is what born these new reforms.
I had to pay him for possession of marijuana. You had to pay a freaking driver responsibility fee for having a drug case.
Well, they suspended your
$1,000
license
a
too,
pop.
didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Yep.
I usually did enough jail time. I had at least restricted one by the time I got out, though.
Right. But still, I mean,
Fuckers.
that's bullshit.
Sorry.
What does one have anything to do with the other? And they just sort of like, oh, well, that'll teach you. Because just like probation, driving's a privilege. So they're like, yeah, we'll just take the privilege away.
And the game of it was the plea for the, and you get the 7411, which that's the sell for the 7411 because it doesn't constitute a conviction that's abstracted with the
7411.
I mean,
That's
it's a joke. I can't.
that was always a good one. Everyone loved to get 7411 back in the day.
I mean, when there was no medical defense, sometimes it was the best you could do.
Of
And then
course it was, yeah.
the people had a.
You still got to do some probation though.
Oh yeah, it was not.
No. Good time.
Yeah, but it comes back to how is probation and parole a privilege? Like, you know, I get it. Like, but I did my time, so I get out. Like, I still got to be governed and told how to act and how to behave.
Yeah.
Just because, you know, like you have guidelines, you have sentencing guidelines. You did your time within your sentencing guidelines, but yet you're still going to oversee me for 2 years of my life.
Yeah.
And be able to have the ability, especially on parole, they can sit you down for 30 or 45 days with no charges or anything, just on a detainer. Just like you mentioned, a 3-day detainer for investigative detainer earlier on a client.
Right.
Like, how is it they can just lock you up for no just cause for 72 hours? Like that shit happened to me in Grand Rapids one time. And I got out in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. with my car still impounded and no charges because they had no evidence.
The whole point of what the reform that came about was that the point you're making, which is that people that get caught up in the criminal justice system are doing nothing. That whole premise of who's getting in there and what happens once they get into the system is the problem. Being on parole forever and being subject to being returned instead of letting people go, and what those infractions are may not be equivalent to the crime that which sent them there originally or whatever. You know, that's things like probation of being, even though the misdemeanor maximum is 2 years and felony maximum is 5 years, it doesn't mean a judge has to put them on probation for 2 years. That may be too much. Give them 6 months. Save the 2 years for when someone that really needs supervision. I do this in all my cases for this. You know what I mean?
Do it they do. They do it for other cases.
I'm
Because
saying this was
you're
the
paying that fee.
this is the criticism that lines itself up. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And the recognition of these things are not just like Komorn's ranting and raving about, broken system, blah, blah, blah. These are scholars, judges, professors, and the elite in the criminal justice think tanks that explored this, investigated, and came up with a conclusion that the balance of these two things are all being done wrong. You know, like some of the criticism was, there's nothing that says that a cop can't give a warning.
Right.
Like they don't have to arrest every person that
They used to do that. Remember? I mean, I remember when I was a kid and you got pulled over and, the cop, if they smelled marijuana in the car, they were probably tossing your car. But if they didn't find anything, they were letting you go. Now they throw you in jail. And even if they did find something, half the time, if they did and it was a small amount, they'd make you pour it out and stomp it into the ground and then they'd let you go.
When I was a teeny bopper, I got caught with some cannabis, and a pipe, and they put me in the car and everything and took me home and gave it to my dad. Like, he's not gonna smoke it, but they didn't know that.
Yeah.
It just went from one to another.
Yeah.
I was going to say that was the era. I mean, that was an era that I grew up in as well. I don't think, it was like there was a little bit more, I think, community. Like they didn't need to arrest people. They would, like a fight in school would not result in a felony charge. They'd send you home for the day.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying that's okay because if I, that kind of thing. There was.
But isn't that how?
Wait, let me finish, because I'm telling you that getting pulled over with beer, being drunk at prom, throwing up in the fucking back, that did not result in the kind of penalties that, being drunk on campus and losing status and whatever, suspensions. It was going on and nobody gave, it's like it wasn't, like unless you really crossed.
Just kids doing dumb shit.
They would drive you home, pour it out as like in the Amanda. Now, that's my high school experience. I will say that some, 4 years and another 3, like 7 or 8 years later, I'm out practicing law. All that same behavior, they're getting dragged into court. I'm telling you, like the second I got to law school, they're like, and it's a lot of it, I realize like I saw like the thing that stuck me when I'm talking, so this is like 90, 95, 96, 97. And what was the OJ? Like the OJ case was also significant for a lot of the domestic violence. That changed as well. Like they stopped, showing up to a police could call the house. Sometimes they would leave.
Right.
Sometimes they'd say, okay, all right, everything okay here? Okay. Apologize to each other. We'll see. Now someone's going to jail. Now,
They have to. It's required.
After the OJ case.
Yeah.
Right. But that was
COVID,
what's that?
they until COVID they changed that.
Right.
Somebody doesn't have to go to jail.
Oh,
now
they
because of
didn't.
COVID.
They didn't
So,
change it down
yeah.
here. The police get
No.
called out on a DV and they find evidence that someone assaulted somebody. They're going to jail.
Well,
If they find
It is-
evidence of an assault, yes. But on just a call over a dispute,
Oh, they've.
Right.
I don't think they've ever locked people up just for the dispute.
This is the point I'm trying to make. The police,
they have.
if
Really?
they call
Separation.
you, whether there's an assault or not,
Oh
if there's
my
an
God.
argument and you made them get in their car and drive to your house,
They're taking you with them.
someone's going to jail. You know why? Because they'll think twice the next time before they do it.
Yeah.
Okay? Do you see what I'm saying?
guess.
They don't want to be involved in that. I mean,
people can't have a bad day, huh?
listen.
no,
You
not no
can,
more.
as long as you're prepared to go to jail, Jim. You can
Right.
have a bad day or two.
Yep.
Well, and then their whole title, like on parole, it was expecting excellence every day. Who even the judge is? Which one of them can show me that they're perfect every
Mhm.
day? And they set the standard so high for people that they keep that recidivism rate, astronomical numbers because they set the bar and and the supervision and all that oversight is so intense that they make it almost impossible for people. I've been lucky that the medical marijuana law actually has changed how I've been able to be viewed in my community, but we still have to fight for every one of those rights. Like I've been fighting every step of the way. I did, like you said, be called out on this case for us fighting it, Michael. But all along, as an activist and leader in the industry with medical marijuana, like every time the state does something, and then I get a letter, and then I call the state and argue their letter, and another letter or another ruling or another change comes out. There's been a few times I've felt directly targeted by the state, because of my loopholes and things that I've managed to find with, the CBD became legal and the memos came out on CBD. They were at my shop 2 weeks before that. I was one of the first people served a letter to close because of the unlicensing. And I was like, I'm a CBD in a doctor's office. There's nothing you can do. Well, 2 weeks later, CBD was illegal now, according to the MRA. And that took activists and attorneys fighting again on that to get the state to understand that you couldn't do that with CBD. I mean, it was just, again, that's my problem with authority is I have continually seen an abuse of authority at every level, from magistrate to judge to teachers to, in my life, And then those same people that are abusing their authority, they turn around and they get in trouble and they end up in some shit anyway. It's like, I don't know. So that's a whole nother topic. But it's why I continue to keep fighting, whenever we have the opportunity to make some changes.
So let me ask some. Let's and that's very commendable, Michael, and I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm curious about this, the status as you're describing it in your involvement with the Michigan's hemp program, the farmer and harvester of said plant. All of it now needs to be regulated through the MDARD. Is that right? Or if it's going to be sold retail, it's got to be tested.
You still have to have a hemp processor license and have it tested. But see, that's what's weird is they're not demanding or requiring the testing of any actual finished product. They're only asking for testing of flower to harvest. So they're not in any of these companies. That's something I actually spoke about, is that there should be more testing required. When I spoke in front of the House of Representatives on how to, it was the House Appropriations Committee on like the budget for the hemp program. I'm like, how is it that you only test one to see if it's only hot, but yet these things are going out in front of, the products are available everywhere to every consumer, like you have, that's the only time I've ever supported some regulation is like,
right,
they're doing nothing. They're doing nothing.
Right. There's a whole show that we could do, maybe like a 12-part series on Michigan's cannabis testing laboratories. That's a
it's
juicy
a shit
topic.
show. I got so many evidence.
No,
but
I know.
Even the state this year on their application. So before, if you were cultivating for CBD, like they have a list when you're on your processor application, like, or on your grower application. I mean, it's like, what are you growing for? So now the top ones are like food, fiber, grain, because those are all approved by the FDA. The very bottom line is, do you wish to grow for CBD for when CBD becomes legal?
CBD is legal. Here.
So why the hell is it changed on the state application for MDARD? Because for 3 years it's been approved on the MDARD application, but this year on my renewal application, it says you want to grow CBD for when CBD becomes legal. I'm like, we've been growing for CBD for 3 years and it's been approved on your application. What do you mean this year I'm going to grow it for when it becomes legal?
Federal court rejects DEA ban on hemp food.
Boom.
Court tells DEA cannot regulate naturally occurring THC in hemp foods. Landmark decision. San Francisco U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. HIA.
That was 2 years ago. I've been waiting for that bill to really become published because that means any THC derived from hemp would be legal because it was developed in the food chain and the FDA was told.
This is recent. This is it's consistent. This is the San Francisco Circuit Court. I mean, Federal District Court. This is recent, but it was specifically on food items that they couldn't.
Yeah, because you're allowed to have 0.3% THC in your hemp product.
Right. I mean, there was a threat by, I think, I don't know, like maybe Brisbane. I don't say a threat, but I think there was some discussions and talk that they were going to be cleaning out gas stations that had CBD products. That was
Cleaning up gas.
Wasn't there a reference to that, or I don't know? And I mean, they didn't.
That's going to be a big job.
It's a huge job. And
so who's going to go around and make sure all those places have a license to sell CBD?
Michigan State Police.
CBD processor's license to sell that at a retail level.
Well, they're not going to be able to sell it there. I mean, isn't it outlawed in Michigan? I mean, you can't have any of that stuff unless it's going through the
MRA, right? That's what I'm saying.
dispensary.
So the change in the law, which was really this, it was a amendment to the MRTMA, which is the most recent in time legislation that directly addressed the definition of marijuana. It's been all over the place. The federal definition I say marijuana. Marijuana is such a bad word to use to describe whatever legalese we're talking about here. There's the plant Cannabis sativa L. By default, it is hemp. By default.
By default.
Any parts of that plant that are greater than 0.3%, 0.3% is considered cannabis or marijuana.
Cannabis.
So that is the federal law. Michigan adopted that originally in its hemp pilot program, and then later in some other legislation. Then it was adopted in the original publishing of the tax and regulate, marijuana, and MRTMA also, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And then, I'm sorry, the MMFLA produced some definitions for hemp and marijuana. But then we get to the recent amendments to the MRTMA, which codified it as being as necessary to be regulated, falls within the regulations of the retail licenses. And I think there was a memo that came out with it, right? There was the amendments, and then they published something talking about this. That's what I'm referring to. Does anyone remember that? I can pull it up somewhere.
No, but we have to take a break.
remember.
We have to.
All right, let's take a break. Are we coming back?
We're coming back
Are we?
momentarily,
All right.
but not for long.
Jim's coming back. We'll.
I may not. I don't know.
All right, take a quick break. Be right back.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
When you're charged with a crime, you need a real attorney. And here's just a few reasons why. The police, the courts, the labs, the drug tests, probation, the judges, the jails, the prisons, and the entire system is just one big machine. They have one objective: take your freedom, take your possessions, take your money, take your children, control your life, and destroy your future. You only get one chance to hire the right attorney. One that will stay in your corner. One that will fight for your rights. One that will fight for your freedom. Choose an attorney that's experienced in fighting the justice machine. Attorney Michael Komorn. Knockout victories one case at a time. Komorn Law. Google it. komornlaw.com.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org.
An important and historical farm crop in American agriculture has returned after having been classified as a controlled substance and illegal. On December 20th, 2018, the President signed the Farm Bill, also known as the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, into law. The signing of the act was great news for the hemp industry, which amended the definition of marijuana in the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Hemp is now defined as the plant, cannabis sativa L, and any part of the plant, growing or not, with less than 0.3% THC concentration on a dry basis. The plant itself is no longer a controlled substance. Hemp is one of the most versatile plants on earth. From clothing, fiber, paper, building materials, hempcrete, biofuels, CBD, and medical uses, it has been a part of America's industry for over 200 years. Even the United States Constitution was drafted on hemp paper. The time is now. If you're thinking of getting in the farming or processing of hemp, contact our global experts, legal, and consultation teams to make sure that you're on the right road when you venture into the new hemp industrial revolution. Michigan Hemp Industries has been a leader and advocate for the return of the hemp industry, so come be a part of the new revolution in agriculture in Michigan.
Charged with a crime, you need a real attorney. And here's just a few reasons why. The police, the courts, the labs, the drug tests, probation, the judges, the jails, the prisons, and the entire system is just one big machine. They have one objective: take your freedom, take your possessions, take your money, take your children, control your life, and destroy your future. You only get one chance to hire the right attorney. One that will stay in your corner. One that will fight for your rights. One that will fight for your freedom. Choose an attorney that's experienced in fighting the justice machine. Attorney Michael Komorn. Knockout victories one case at a time. Komorn Law. Google it. komornlaw.com.
Bill Schuette led the charge against medical marijuana, and even after the will of the voters was decided and the support was enormous, he still continued to fight against the will of the voters, keeping patients from the medicine that they need. So I think it's important that we all speak up on what we think about this initiative. But when the voters have their say, their will must stand.
I am Earl from G3 Cannabis Therapy Network, and you are watching Planet Green Trees, the original and #1 podcast in Michigan for all things cannabis and legal news.
Here's Michael Komorn with more Planet Green Trees.
All right, thanks for staying with us. This is the Planet Green Trees, officially episode number 549.
It's a lot.
It is the anniversary of the great victory. We're joined by special guest Michael Thue. We've been glowing in the significance of that case and the impact that it had, and the and some of the fallout, I guess, from the judiciary and the legislature. And we're talking about how, despite the very clear set of laws that were, the finding in that case, which was very clear, there still seems to be a lot of pushback from judges in this legislation that's being introduced is attempting to actually restrict people's medical marijuana use when in drug court, mental health court, or veterans court. Now, we're back at it. You know, we got off into a little tangent there on the break about the Fourth Amendment, which is always an interesting topic. But we have a couple other topics here. Jamie, what other things did you want to get at? Because we got to get up early for court tomorrow. Steve wanted me to let you know. Just so, see whatever.
What I get at it, I mean, just should be mentioned that the city of Detroit put out a language for another ordinance after going through the issue of the challenge in federal court and constitutional grounds. And
that's on our list. That's a good one. We want to get there real quick.
Really made much of a distinction from the issues that were found in that original case. It's being asked for injunction again before it even passes. So I guess the court's going to decide if it needs to pass first. That's where it is. There are people that say that the city should be fighting it further. I mean, there's that weird little. It's not little. It's major. It's like the point is for equity, and then somebody goes to try to do it, and then it's unconstitutional. So where's the line? How can you do what's intended and reach the people and get past these types of challenges?
All right. So the question. So the issue was that they were. The issue was that they were not. The court found that the language in the ordinance for recreational marijuana was invalid, we could say, because it was too inclusive, I guess it would be a way to say it. But it's in the idea and premise is not bad. The idea is that if the city of Detroit's going to opt in for recreational marijuana, then they want to make sure that the people of the city of Detroit are identified as possible owners, or that they should be the intended owners of these businesses. Now, Michigan does have a social equity program, and while the state brags about taking in approximately $3 billion of U.S. currency, their social equity program has been a disaster. Especially when you say $3 billion in social equity disaster. But
still limits, one of the issues has been how limiting it is in the amount of licenses.
Unequivocally, it's limited in the amount of licenses in terms of the given out by the state, and also, like anybody else who's not social equity, still the inventory of property and buildings or locations where this activity can take place is limited and hard to get into or get to that table. That to me seems to be an ongoing problem. But
can I want to say something
please.
That might be unpopular.
All right.
So I think Detroit has already lost. The township or the cities around Detroit have opened up shop, and
I don't know.
They have.
I know. I agree, but it's still a huge market.
I don't disagree, but I feel like Detroit was in a position based on the progressive nature of their allowance of these facilities in their city borders for such a period of time. And honestly, I think that the city should have reaped some of the benefits by being on the bleeding edge of some of this stuff, and instead it went to the suburbs. So, I mean, I agree that, I think it's difficult to implement an equity program and not have it get tied up in the courts. And I appreciate what the city was trying to do, but I think that this delay has really ultimately cost the city a great edge that they had, which would have ended up just generating a shitload of tax revenue for the city of Detroit, along with all these other numerous benefits of having these facilities within the city of Detroit.
I mean, we were talking about the city of Detroit and the legislation, which Jamie, I want you to give your opinion on that. But the social equity blame here that I'm putting out is not the city of Detroit. It's the state of Michigan.
Oh, I hear you.
Because they could have done a lot with $3 billion.
Sure.
And none of it involves setting up resources, capital for the social equity people to utilize.
Right.
Why not?
Right. Agreed.
As they're betting zero. They're betting zero. $3 billion is nothing, means nothing. Like let's say this, let's say $2 billion, and you've got a robust social equity program. How about 2.5 billion? What's that, 500 million? Is that what that leaves?
0.5 billion, yeah.
How many billions is it if you got 3 billion?
Yeah.
And
500 million.
2.5 billion, 500 million, right?
Yeah.
So let's just say you do that. Give that 500 million to equity program or whatever, 10% of that.
$3 billion is not the revenue that went to the state, though. That's the total
number of
revenue that went
sales
through the system.
Yeah, whatever.
Well, I mean, it's a big difference.
Well, there's a scale here that certainly equates to
it's still a shitload
dollars
of money.
made by the state,
and certainly it's more than the administrative overhead of the program. And a significant portion of that, I agree, should have went to programs that were meant to ultimately lift up the people in the communities that the drug war has ravaged, and none of that has happened.
I got a question. Jamie, I wonder if you know the answer to this. There was, I think it was up to $20 million that was set aside for research for PTSD and veterans.
I was with you when you're talking about the $20 million, but I didn't hear that last
I thought
part.
it was, for research grants
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
veterans where the state would be
Yeah.
giving out, and they actually opened up for bidding and whatnot, right?
They did, and they decided where it goes. There's a list of where
Right.
all the, yeah.
I don't think anyone in Michigan, I don't think very many people in Michigan, they may have, my understanding is that, the facility that has received the large sum of that went to Arizona. I could be mistaken, and there's data that exists, but
I can pull up the list. I know some went to Wayne State. I know MAPS was a
Michigan,
definitely
right?
one
That's
of them.
right. But I don't think any of the major institutions in Michigan that do get appropriations from the state, such as U of M, MSU. I don't know if there was bids for that, but it seemed a little odd that it wasn't that.
Dr. Thue Fifthly did get a little bit.
Who did,
It's
Wayne
not
State?
in State, but
Wayne State.
No, I said it's not in state.
Right. There's the one is that the one in Arizona?
Yeah, she has been based out of Arizona. That's the one was set to get funding, and then it got cut off, and she continued to do some research. I mean, there's a long story there with her. That's pretty cool, I guess. Given how fucked up everything was.
We talking about the same thing? You're saying that there's a group that's not in Michigan that got the funding to do this research, and it was cut off, but they're in Arizona, right? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Been to Michigan a few times, and I'm glad that she got some of it. She's been
sure
been very good, just to demonstrate professionals wanting to really research stuff further.
For sure. So, Jamie, what do you know about this ordinance here? Is it got the same kind of? Yeah, so this Jim, this ordinance. Did you read that?
I mean, there's some better stuff in it. I mean, it's
the capital business owner must provide the long-time low-income deterrent applying for certification with 20% to 50% ownership of the business and commercial property at half the rate of market value of rent for at least 10 to 20 years.
Yep, and there's a group that helps to bring somebody through the whole process of organizing, the company and getting funding and property and equipment and training and all that.
That's my
stuff.
idea. I'm glad they're doing it. I'll take full credit for that. I'm not kidding. I know they've got this joint ventures pathways, which is holding itself out to be a potential capitalizer for some of these businesses, and they were advertising that. All right, Jamie, what else is on the agenda? What else you got out there? Amanda, what's Jamie first? Go ahead. Let's hear what you got.
We covered 5512. I think it's appropriate that Michael came on, just to discuss that it's been a year since the ruling, and then also how this proposed legislation relates to that case.
Yeah.
this case, so that's pretty cool. And then, yeah, the city of Detroit thing, it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Agreed.
Reminds me of Traverse City. They're becoming the cities of what not to do,
Right.
how to avoid court.
Right. Not something to brag about. But Michael, any final thoughts as we go in the direction of shutting her down?
No, I thank you for calling and asking me to join you guys. Can't believe it's been a year already. You know, it's sad to hear that the state is still, even with a unanimous decision from the Court of Appeals, who has hardly ever given us any decisions in our favor, where we've almost always had to go to the Supreme Court to get any relief. You know, that our state is going to continue to still fight the Court of Appeals by trying to make their own rules. They continue to write their own rules and try to steal our program that we passed with the will of the people. So
It's
again,
civil war.
It's always going to be a fight with these people. It's like, again, you think you gained some ground, and you know we did, but they're constantly trying to take whatever ground we gained back. So it's never going to be over. We always got to stay on top of being involved with, you know, keeping up on our activism and involvement with our communities.
In a way, it's a good metaphor for life, right? I mean, there's never one victory that like sets you going forever. It's the getting up every day from, to do it over and over and over again. That's where the victory's at. It's the setbacks and how you respond to them, and and not giving up. That's the end of the day. If we're gonna have. But it's true. They got they're running the tables. They're the dealer, and they're counting cards and cutting the deck and using the Joker and like some other, unfair play. Amanda, any final thoughts as Steve's going to sing us out in a little while?
Yes. No real final thoughts, Michael. I missed part of the show, so I can't really go back to what you guys talked about before, but it's always a pleasure being on. And also thank you for all of the work that you did on, especially with the Michael Thue case and making sure that everybody in Michigan has the opportunity to still use cannabis as medicine no matter what. So hats off to you and thank you. And thank you, Michael, over there, Michael Thue. Not that we wanted you to get in trouble or anything or to go through all of that, but we appreciate your sacrifice.
It had to be done. It's something we've wanted to do for a while. And really, again, the kudos goes to Komorn for taking it down and helping me to get there. We really, Komorn, there's a lot of times that I actually get teary-eyed and worked up about what we were able to accomplish and the impact that we've able to have immediate impact and positive impact on people's lives with that ruling. I still hear about it every month. Somebody calls, somebody makes a comment, somebody asks for the court case so they can turn it into their PO. It's been life changing. So it's thank you for that. You have helped me to be able to do something that I've wanted to do since I came home from prison. And again, it's always going to be a fight. We got to fight for every step that we get. But we gave them a really good knockout punch that as days been, and it's taken them a year to figure out how to come back at us. So, again, we'll have to rally people to fight 5512 and call your representatives. And if your representative is one of the sponsors on the bill, let's get them to change their opinion or get them voted out of office. But, it comes back to the activism side. So thank you.
They should call it the anti-Thue legislation. That's what they should. They should give it like a name like that. That's the anti-Thue. Jamie, you know what I'm saying, for talking points. And I bet they don't even know it. You know, it's the problem. The whole legislature is so uneducated on this. That's the worst thing.
Well, a lot of people are. I mean,
it's
the attorney I talked to today.
I know. It's an old cliche. It's an old cliche, Jamie. I can't believe he's sitting. What?
My letter to the committee, I said that the response should be to codify the ruling and the intent of the Thue ruling and the intent into law, to make it clear that if somebody has their car, they can use their medicine.
Did you get to talk at the hearing? Was it in the judiciary?
No, I just sent it. It was scheduled and regulatory. So I sent a letter to the clerk, and then the clerk would then distribute that to all of the representative offices. I mean, of who's members of the committee.
Did the committee meet?
Instead of being there to submit a card,
Did they meet and take public comment?
They didn't do that. They voted to transfer it to the judiciary committee, where it joined some other bills. I've been hearing, not confirmed, but that there's been a few people, writing people and the committee members and people who are sponsoring bills and meeting with some of them, and that it is starting to work, and that we might be making some awareness concerning the issues with 5512. We got to keep it up, but hopefully this one's working again.
It's
kind of like what Michael just said.
Now, from my end, I've been receiving calls ever since we got the ruling. So I see a different side of it in here, but it's nice to hear some of the things that Michael was saying about, Michael Thue was saying about people approaching him and, getting the case, and they're able to turn it into their probation officers, and things actually happening the way they're supposed to be. And not like we're hearing this week about the court in St. Clair County that just doesn't want to take the card, and they want more, and you need something from a primary care physician. And all I can think is, what if you don't have a primary care physician? A lot of people don't have insurance. And if you don't have insurance, you generally probably don't have a primary care physician. If you get sick or whatever, you need to see a doctor, you just kind of go to whoever you think you can go and afford a visit with or something. So for a judge to declare that everyone needs to get more documentation from a primary care physician and not a certifying doctor is absurd. I mean, it's a perspective of somebody who is so out of touch with reality, just based on the fact that they've probably had good health insurance their entire life, and can't even conceive the concept of somebody who doesn't have health insurance. And there's a lot of people out there, I think, that don't have health insurance in today's current health system. So just that declaration alone by that judge, and again, these judges they're doctors. I mean, they're, really, they're
the doctor in a bad situation too, or an uncomfortable situation, because there's these forms that they're given.
They should not fill them out. You should call me and I'll tell them where to put the forms.
Yeah, it's really putting the doctors in a bad spot, because nobody wants to put it's a big thing. You don't know what's going to happen if you fill out these papers, even though
I would not do it. Listen, the certifying doctor is not and should not be involved with what they're asking for, which is the recommended dosing, frequency of use, method of ingestion. It's not for the doctor.
Under what authority?
It doesn't matter. The doctor's authority is to not.
No, it does matter.
Be involved in that.
The doctor can't even write that, though. The doctor cannot write that. It is a violation of
other
federal
DEA
law.
listeners,
The doctor can lose their license for writing in that information.
That's the point. It's a clear viation of HIPAA.
Courts are requiring it. I don't know, Michael, if you've seen these or had any patients come through you that had specific paperwork from the courts that they wanted filled out. Not just a standard, not just standard paper application or something. It was like several pages.
No, the only courts that are denying it up where I'm at now since the ruling is the drug court. So the
See,
drug court is still not allowing.
I've heard
County, Grand Traverse County.
I've
they're
heard
just not allowing
Charlevoix.
drug court.
I heard Charlevoix. There's some judge up in Charlevoix is giving people trouble. I got that call.
I don't know
think
that they're going as far in the cases that I'm talking about. I don't know if they're going as far as to restrict their usage, but they're making it absolutely as hard as possible by giving them all these forms to have somebody fill out, you know?
Yeah.
But that came up though when Pittsburgh legalized, or Pennsylvania, for medical, and a couple other states that followed right after that, that they were asking doctors to put in the certification, the recommended usage, recommended milligrams, and all this. And it became a big issue in these other states because of the DEA license. Like, it's a medical recommendation. When they start actual writing in dosing of how to use that a controlled substance, like, they're at risk for their DEA license, and there's a
danger zone.
And the patients have to release this shit. So, I mean, the courts can't just go to the doctor.
Like, there's so much trouble. There's so much trouble that's associated with this conversation if it were to exist. And as Amanda saying, it's a reality. I'm very troubled by it. I don't like.
It's bad.
You know, I mean, it's
the judges, aka the kings and queens of our day.
They reign.
Yeah.
They think that they're doctors too, I guess.
Well, I think they just get on this power trip where it's like, you know, maybe they have this personal thing that they just dislike cannabis for whatever reason. And so, you know, it's just, it's still ingrained in some folks, you know, that deep hatred for the plant. So if somebody comes across their court, they're certainly going to make it as difficult as humanly possible for them to continue the usage. They don't want to grant permission unless they have to. Which is terrible, because then we see these folks that are being put in a position to choose, you know, like to go back to opiates or whatever else they were trying to get away from. If they're recommended cannabis, it's, you know, they probably need it.
And the science continues to show the proof of reduction in opiate use in legal medical marijuana states. Like, when we have an opiate epidemic and we got people dying of fentanyl all over the place.
I'm totally blaming it.
And yet we still want to fight and argue about medical marijuana.
Right.
Like,
what am I going to do?
What are we doing?
I did.
Do
I
something
gave up.
else with your time.
Right.
It doesn't work the way you think.
Anyway.
Yeah.
We may be, according to Facebook, which is one of the platforms that we were broadcasting,
I'm pretty sure we got reported.
We're involved with some hate speech and bullying. I don't know what was said. What could have been hate speech full of bullying?
I don't know.
Is it a swear word?
It just depends. I mean, you could get that for anything, for a number of things these days.
What if being accused of bullying is my trigger? Seriously, I feel that way. I feel like that's just kidding.
It's an abuse of authority. Facebook is doing it right now. It's everywhere in front of us right now. It's these mask mandates. It's the fucking truckers at the border. It's everything that has to do with our society anymore. And, you know, they've even proved it in court that the cops are not peace officers anymore, and they're not responsible to serve and protect. They write tickets. They fill out reports. That's it.
I mean, like, I take issue with the use of words in the normal context of speech, however exasperated or accentuated or foul, is not and shall not make out bullying under any circumstance. I just don't know how you get there, you know? I mean, bullying is a contemplation of something that is, I'm just saying, you know, that I think is a problem. Like, when that threshold of what defines that becomes, you know, you looked at me funny, or I didn't like the tone that you disagreed with me in, or something like that.
Yeah.
We are,
it's bad,
right? We're not allowed to disagree anymore.
I know.
You cause a scene at a school board meeting, you're a terrorist now, and you can.
And quite frankly, if you express your opinion, you're, you know, on anything.
Here's the thing.
Anything.
Listen, the ideas here, generally speaking, you know, I think the biggest mistake you can make is to engage in this on the internet because there's like people that are going to instigate you and get into those. I just think it's a no-win. There's too much divide, and no matter who you're trying to sway, they're already tribally devoted to each other, and there's no middle ground. However, I do think that when the time's right, we still live in a place where discourse should be allowed to take place. The key is to be civil about it, which is the hardest part, of course. If you can be civilized about your disagreements, or there's some areas you may not even want to walk into, but there are, it's. I don't know. What do you think, Jim? We got to wrap this up. It's been you totally didn't wave your finger around like you normally do. But is there possibility of civil discourse in the future, or should people just keep their mouths shut for fear of being accused of bullying and?
Just don't be afraid of being accused of bullying. I guess
Yeah.
I don't know. It certainly seems that it's getting to the point that there's such a divide in our country that it's not like it was when I was growing up at all. And I think the internet has a lot to do with that, and the fact that at the end of the day, we're all being fed information that reinforces our belief systems and structures 24 hours a day, and it has created a giant.
Some say it's connected to the participation trophy era. Is that possible? Do you think it's all correlated?
Could be.
Everyone's entitled.
Yeah.
Everyone's entitled.
I didn't get a trophy.
I didn't get those either.
I didn't get shit. I sucked at baseball. I still
Tom
played.
was always on the worst teams.
I know. I still played, but I sucked, man. I never got shit.
I probably wasn't very good either.
But you're not entitled to shit. You're not walking around like, hey, where's my award for being here? You know what I'm saying? That's the.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was how there was no expectation. I mean, you played because you wanted to go play and have fun.
This is the correlation that it is. Like, we want equal opportunity. We don't necessarily want to force equal outcomes. There's a big difference. You know what I mean? Like, that's been the divide of what I think many debate about. But put in those terms, I don't think you want to say the analogy that was being used was something to the effect of there's X amount of thousands of YouTube and Spotify music makers and people that produce music every single day. Like there's, I don't know, X amount of millions, right?
Sure.
And only a small portion of them are going to get the type of play that's going to get them either the amount of streams that creates revenue for them or picked up and, potentially some kind of record deal. You can't change that. There's no equity outcome that does it. Like you can't force people to like music that they don't like and buy music that they don't like. You can't. They so the idea is that the Grammys, which is an awarding of those performers or whatever it's based upon, you can't force a musician into that Grammy win by if your intentions are not based on merit only. Right, or trying to create an outcome. I'm saying of the national debate and the narrative that's taking place right now about the, merit-based or outcome-based. That's a discussion, for participation trophies. Right? Does everyone get one just for being there, or, and I'm saying that, there is. The music industry is an example of how you cannot regulate or produce outcomes on things like talent and music writing. Like you just.
Well, I don't know if I would agree with that. I mean, I think there's some elements. I mean, look at these. The boy bands that.
The kids still bought the music.
Of course they did.
And they still liked it.
It was something that was built. It was a corporate machine. It was someone said, I want a specific outcome. They put the pieces together, and the outcome was born.
Okay. And so that's not bad.
I'm not saying it's one thing.
Well, I'm saying it's good or bad. What it did is they produced a product in music.
Right.
That was forget the quality. It doesn't matter what
It sold. I mean, that's what that
There's
was
not-
the outcome
and-
they were looking for.
And theoretically, the same kind of opportunity exists today for anybody else.
Well, not necessarily. No.
Well, they can upload their music, they can get creative, they can do the thing.
I agree, but there's so many.
There's
so
too many.
nuances.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, and there's so many nuances. I mean, with Spotify, the way that you begin to monetize yourself and expose yourself is you got to get picked up by the Spotify algorithms and start getting mixed into people's playlists.
Sure.
And that shit ain't free. So just uploading your shit, unless someone's specifically searching for you, they may never find you.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's got to get hot somewhere, you know. And if you're not going on touring or drawing I don't know. But my point is that
it's an equal platform.
Yeah, it's like the.
Well, but what I'm saying is it's not equal at all.
Well, it's more equal now than it has ever been, in a way.
I agree. There's greater access.
Right.
Yes.
But there's more equal access than ever before
to the platform, but not not to the promotion. And one is
more equal.
Right.
Well, how would you create that situation if you've got 36 million people that are uploading videos? What are you going to do? Every one of them is going to get $1 million contract, whether they're good or bad?
No, I mean, if you're asking, what you do is you make an algorithm that's fair and that takes someone's specific tastes and analyzes the entire pool.
There are people that have built a musical following on YouTube.
Sure there is, but,
And
they usually promote in different ways.
Justin Bieber, wasn't he discovered from YouTube? I mean, that's what I thought. He was a YouTube singer, and then all of a sudden he got discovered. I think Usher discovered him, actually. And then look at him now.
Listen, there's money in YouTube downloads or watches or clicks. If you're
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You get 5,000 followers, you can start selling ads.
Selling ads, yeah. There's there's so many layers to it. We're just talking about music. There's all these other YouTubers. But
Ryan's World.
Ryan's World.
But
A lot of Minecraft. We're watching a lot of
back to
Minecraft
it.
YouTube stuff now.
Yep.
Minecraft.
Roblox. Any Roblox?
A lot of Roblox. I keep seeing the. They did an episode on South Park, but it's like they're what is it? The Warlocks or whatever. What is it? Come on.
I don't know.
Come on.
I don't know.
It's like the interactive shooting. Kind of your character and you're hunting people. What is it? Going after, attacking.
I don't know.
All right, I don't know.
like a single player game or the.
No, it's a universe. All right, never mind. I'm not ready to talk.
Good. We got to shut it down anyway.
Warcraft.
We're shutting it down.
Thanks.
Shut it down.
All right, thank you, everybody. Good chatting, catching up.
Good to see you guys.
Bully anyone.
Don't bully anybody.
Yeah, good to talk with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Michael.
Jamie, good night. I'll
Have a
talk
good
to you
night.
tomorrow, brother.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
When you're charged with a crime, you need a real attorney. And here's just a few reasons why. The police, the courts, the labs, the drug tests, probation, the judges, the jails, the prisons, and the entire system is just one big machine. They have one objective. Take your freedom, take your possessions, take your money, take your children, control your life, and destroy your future. You only get one chance to hire the right attorney. One that will stay in your corner. One that will fight for your rights. One that will fight for your freedom. Choose an attorney that's experienced in fighting the justice machine. Attorney Michael Komorn. Knockout victories one case at a time. Komorn Law. Google it. komornlaw.com.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org.
Hi, I'm attorney Michael Komorn of Komorn Law PLC, and you are watching Planet Green Trees.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today, MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today, MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org.
Before you plea, call me, attorney Michael Komorn.
An important and historical farm crop in American agriculture is returned after having been classified as a controlled substance and illegal. On December 20th, 2018, the President signed the Farm Bill, also known as the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, into law. The signing of the act was great news for the hemp industry, which amended the definition of marijuana in the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Hemp is now defined as the plant, Cannabis sativa L, and any part of the plant, growing or not, with less than 0.3% THC concentration on a dry basis. The plant itself is no longer a controlled substance. Hemp is one of the most versatile plants on earth. From clothing, fiber, paper, building materials, hempcrete, biofuels, CBD, and medical uses, it has been a part of America's industry for over 200 years. Even the United States Constitution was drafted on hemp paper. The time is now. If you're thinking of getting in the farming or processing of hemp, contact our global experts, legal, and consultation teams to make sure that you're on the right road when you venture into the new hemp industrial revolution. Michigan Hemp Industries has been a leader and advocate for the return of the hemp industry, so come be a part of the new revolution in agriculture in Michigan.
I am Earl from G3 Cannabis Therapy Network, and you are watching Planet Green Trees, the original and #1 podcast in Michigan for all things cannabis and legal news.